Hello, New Paltz. Welcome to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. I'm here every Wednesday at 9 a.m. talking movies, new reviews, recommendations, lists. I just love movies, and that's what I do here. On today's show, I'm going to review How to Make a Killing, give you a 3-movie highlight on 3 of Glen Powell's past films he starred in recently, share a little movie news, and close out the show with my 3 throwback recommendations for this week. I'll be right back, but first here's some movie music, starting with Rags to Riches by Tony Bennett from the Goodfellas soundtrack. Welcome back to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. Kicking off the show today, How to Make a Killing released in theaters last weekend. Directed by John Patton Ford, disowned at birth by his obscenely wealthy family, blue-collar Beckett Redfellow, played by Glen Powell, will stop at nothing to reclaim his inheritance, no matter how many relatives stand in his way. I had heard about this movie a few weeks ago, and I forgot it was coming out this month until I saw the trailer in theaters recently. It's really good to see Glen Powell continuing to get these leading roles. I've enjoyed him in so much recently. He's got a great movie star personality that he's been bringing to a lot of really good movies lately. This time you get him in the lead of this really dark and messed up idea for a thriller of a guy taking out a bunch of his family members, and I enjoyed a lot about this movie. I think Glen Powell is great, but I don't think this idea is brought to life in the best way possible, and it's quite messy at points. Going into this movie, I was interested to see how this story was going to tie together with this setup. You have this idea of Powell's character killing his relatives to get closer to his inheritance, and it looks to have some dark comedy elements. And with the lead character being this guy that is killing people for money, not out of self-defense or anything like that, but straight up murder, I was interested to see how this would be all balanced, and I think there's a lot of interesting stuff here that explores some themes in interesting ways. Of course, you have this idea of wealth and class. The opening minutes of the film introduce this family and the history of everything that happened with Powell's character and his side of the family, why he is in this lower status of the family that was unwelcomed. You see the coldness and nastiness of this family, and how they all have this power and wealth, and are so selfish and careless towards others. Seeing what Beckett went through, and where he's at in life at the start of this story, how he was raised has affected him, and what promises he's made, you do get invested in the character. Obviously what he's doing and the way he's sticking it to his horrible family is terrible and not at all justified, and that's where I think the movie does a good job with the darkness of this whole thing. It tackles this idea of living the best life you can and fighting to live the way you deserve and what that really means. Having these goals that you get so hyper-focused on that you miss what you found on the way that might actually be better for you. The way it takes you through developments in Beckett's life in the midst of this scheme worked pretty well for me at exploring these themes and seeing points where he's weighing his options and considering what he has done and what's happened to him during this whole plan that brings some interesting and sometimes tragic elements as well. You feel how many ways this could have gone differently, if he made different decisions, what could have been. There's a framing device the movie uses of him narrating his story and sort of reflecting on everything that I think brought this idea to life really well. And Powell's narration has a lot of personality and is used for some clever jokes at points too. I think there's some points in the story where he makes choices that don't make a lot of sense, particularly towards the end, where his motivations of certain decisions don't flow as well scene to scene. You see him start to go one way and then make a shift, and there's some points where the reason for the shift feels pretty unnatural and doesn't make much sense. Jessica Henwick is good here. She's kind of the person he meets that presents the idea of him, of considering your goals, and as you're pursuing something you've always wanted, what will you do if you discover that it's not actually what you want, that there could be something better? This character and the performance work really well to ground everything and balance the craziness of the concept with these more human ideas it's tackling. Killing several family members to inherit a fortune is the wild idea that is the selling point of the movie, but the way it uses this idea to look at some real stuff about finding your way in life was really captivating at points as well. Her chemistry with Powell is great, and the way their relationship works in this story, it adds some conflict and complication to what he's doing. And Glen Powell is great here in the lead. I've been enjoying him in so much of what he's been doing lately. He's been around for a bit now, but he's really started to get more work since Top Gun Maverick. His charm and energy he brings to supporting roles, and of course when he's in the lead, he's captivating and brings the necessary emotions to his characters. He's so fun in Twisters, he's really angry and intense, but also really sarcastically funny in The Running Man. He brings the emotions needed, and his energy makes anything he's been doing lately so interesting. Here he plays a very weird mix of a character that he balances so well. It's a tough balance to pull off. He's this guy that is doing this horrible thing, Yes, some of his relatives aren't good people, this whole family has treated him poorly, but they absolutely did not deserve to be murdered, and all the things Beckett does to them here. What he's doing is terrible, and Powell brings just the right amount of that horribleness. You see how he comes up with this idea and is able to convince himself that it's the right direction to go. He's had struggle in his life, he's worked hard to get where he's been, but he still gets treated poorly by unfair practices of the rich, like nepotism and favoritism. You get to see the positive elements of the character really effectively early on. He's friendly, he's hardworking, and has built a life for himself, and when he's treated poorly, you feel angry for him. He has this idea of what if he killed his relatives, and how he tries to justify it as he goes along, trying to minimize what he's doing as him just fighting for the way of life he's always deserved. And I think Powell shows that so well, the way he's able to pull off these murders and not feel very guilty about it. There's some semblance of the character's morality that comes out at different points, but you really see this rage and bitter attitude towards all this that he takes to a dangerous level, and along the way, Powell is really entertaining to follow. He's got a great leading energy, and has some awesome line deliveries that are really fun. Even though his character is doing terrible things, you get engaged and enjoy following him. It's a strange balance, but one that I think is executed very well. There's also two performances I want to mention for two of the family members. One is Zach Woods. I knew him from playing Gabe on The Office. Here he's such an irritating character in so many of his scenes. He's rude, he's arrogant, he thinks everything he says is brilliant, and he puts other people down. He's so condescending. Zach Woods' line delivery and mannerisms are so infuriating, but so funny also. He was probably the standout performance for me of the family member characters. The other I really enjoyed was Topher Grace. His character isn't as annoying. He's very eccentric and over the top. He's fast-talking and kind of sleazy. He's not in too many scenes, but he was also one of the more memorable characters of the family members. Margaret Qualley also plays a role in this, and she brings a memorable energy to her character, but how she is used in the script was pretty weird for me. You get some backstory with her and Beckett that becomes very underdeveloped and doesn't have enough between them to get you invested in that dynamic. She keeps showing up every now and then earlier in the movie in these scenes that are very uninteresting and repetitive. The way her and Beckett's relationship develops feels very abrupt, and she presents another subplot that ties in a pretty forced way. It's really dull earlier on, and then Where It Goes took the story to some developments I didn't care for and made the plot more convoluted. Where It Goes in the end begins to feel drawn out. I think there is a way her character and her side of the story could have worked well in what they were trying to do with her in the story if they developed their relationship more and incorporated her subplot in more naturally. But here it was the thing that kept coming up that I just didn't get invested in. I think the ending, specifically the final shot and moment, is really good and ties the themes of the story together really well here. It's a little unnatural getting there, but once you see the fate of everyone and how this whole thing wraps up, I think there's really clever use of the visuals and some sound elements in the final moments that make you feel the impact of this ending really effectively. I think the actual scenes with Beckett taking out his family aren't very memorable here. Some of them feel pretty short and anticlimactic. I get he doesn't have emotional attachment to these people, but how the kills go down and the pacing of them don't really have the most excitement or suspense, and the methods are pretty basic. There's one sequence that gets crazier and ties in some earlier elements in clever ways in some action. I did enjoy that one a lot, though. Overall, I think this movie is a good version of the concept that tackles themes in interesting ways with a fascinating lead character and performance. There's clever moments, and I got engaged in the overall story, but the kills aren't very memorable, and the incorporation of the subplots and how they build to the end feel forced and underdeveloped. Ultimately, the final shot and resolution is really clever, and I liked a lot of what this movie has to offer. I give it a 74 out of 100. I'll be right back on Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale, but first here's some more movie music, starting with Love Theme from The Godfather by Nino Rota and Carlo Savina from the Godfather score. Welcome back to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. Next up today, I'm going to do a 3-movie highlight on 3 movies Glen Powell has starred in over the past 2 years. He's been around for a bit in smaller roles. He played a stockbroker in The Dark Knight Rises, where he gets his head smashed on a desk by Bane, but he's really taken off since playing Hangman in Top Gun Maverick. That was the first of his major roles I saw him in. I've enjoyed a lot of the movies he's been in, and these are 3 I haven't talked about on this show yet. One I watched for the first time a few days ago, the other 2 I have seen, but wanted to revisit. Let's get right into this. The first movie I'm going to talk about here is Everybody Wants Some. Directed by Richard Linklater, in 1980 Texas, a college freshman moves into an old frat house with his new baseball teammates as they party their way through the final weekend of summer. This movie has been described as the spiritual sequel to Dazed and Confused, which is also directed by Richard Linklater, that I've actually never seen before. But from what I know about Dazed and Confused, it's kind of a chill movie of a group of friends hanging out right before a big change in their life. In Dazed and Confused, it's the last day of high school, and in Everybody Wants Some, it's the last weekend before college starts. And in Everybody Wants Some, you get that vibe of all these young men coming together in this house and going on these adventures at a point where they are all in one place with no responsibilities for a few days. They drive around Texas in their car with the windows down, go to these clubs and hangouts, and try to meet girls and party. There really isn't much of a plot. It's these chapters in this weekend together, just living the day-to-day life with these guys. They hang out in the pool, use things as baseball bats that are not baseball bats, they play pranks on each other, and the movie is really fun as you see these guys grow closer, talk a little bit about their futures and some of their views on where they're going and their goals. They're teammates on the baseball team, and you also feel that brotherly bond and the way they are super competitive with each other and super dedicated to winning. There's a number of scenes that are really relatable as guys hanging out and chilling with each other. There's some parts that get a little unpleasant for me when there's some fights at these clubs, and some of them being more reckless than others at different times. I got less invested at those parts, and even as having some of those dramatic elements, it just didn't interest me too much. But when it has the more down-to-earth moments, and the guys getting to know each other, and having this weekend at this point in their life where they all have this freedom, I just really enjoyed the experience this movie offers. There's some really funny bits and memorable characters, so many times where it feels like hanging out with your buddies, that makes this so enjoyable. As for Glen Powell's role here, he's not the lead character, but he's definitely one of the more prominent characters of the group. The ensemble is quite large, so some of the guys are in the background a little more than others. The lead of this movie is really Blake Jenner as Jake, a freshman coming to the team for the first time, and he's kind of the point of view character. I enjoyed his character a lot in that performance. He's definitely the most fleshed out character, and he works well in the group dynamic. Glen Powell plays one of the most high energy characters of the group. He looks like he's having so much fun the whole movie. He's having a good time with his buddies. He's sarcastic and messes with them, but you tell how much he cares also. The energy he brings makes for some of the funniest dialogue in the movie, and he's always memorable when he's on screen. Wyatt Russell is also in this movie. I enjoyed him a lot as well. This cast and group ensemble and the chemistry with all of them feels so natural. This is a fun coming-of-age movie. It's super chill and a fun watch. I can't fully say if you're a fan of Dazed and Confused you'll like this, because I haven't seen that movie, but from what I know about it and why people love it, and this also being directed by Richard Linklater, that might be safe to say. Give it a watch. The second movie I'm going to talk about is 2024's Hitman, also directed by Richard Linklater. A professor moonlighting as a hitman of sorts for his city police department descends into dangerous, dubious territory when he finds himself attracted to a woman who enlists his services. This movie is, like Everybody Wants Some, directed by Richard Linklater, but it is quite different from that film and a very unique film overall. It's somewhat based on the true story of Gary Johnson, who Powell plays here. This idea of him being this fake hitman who was part of these sting operations to catch people trying to hire hitmen to kill someone. You have that part of the story of him working with the police. You also have him as a psychology professor, and then it has a romance plot as well with Adria Arona's character, and it all ties together really well, and how it manages to merge all the storylines is really smart. The script tackles ideas of who this guy is, who he becomes in the process of the story, and the psychology of change. You start seeing Adria Arona's character Madison, and that relationship begins to move closer and closer to the police side of things. You have different people with different goals, and you're trying to figure out what lengths they would go to, what they're capable of, how the characters develop, and how crazy the story gets. I don't want to talk too specifically about things. Watching this movie and seeing how all the very different elements come together is so exciting and special. It feels very unpredictable. The relationships with the characters and who knows secrets and what other characters are hiding makes the story so complex and seemingly a little messy. There's a lot going on, but it's never convoluted or confusing. The script elements start to come together in clever ways that make sense but that keep you guessing as well. I think the whole cast is great. You have Adria Arona as Madison, who meets Gary in this very strange scenario for both of them. She's really fun, and the two match their energies so well. They get deeper into this relationship and learn more about each other and their pasts that become so electric, and it's so exciting to see all this go down. And Glen Powell ties all these storylines together and brings this complex script to life so seamlessly with his performance. There's so much going on with this guy as he's leading these different lives, and Powell is able to bring such different energies depending on what's needed in the scene. The look of each persona adds a lot, but the body language and the tone of his voice, how he sounds a little more nerdy as Gary and brings more confidence in cool and other roles, it goes so much to making this story feel so unpredictable and how complicated this guy's life is getting. Powell's performance just brings all the elements of this guy's life together so well. It's an awesome lead performance that brings this crazy idea to life so wonderfully. He's fun, he's intense, he's smart, and where this whole crime story goes is made so much more exciting by this character. How he seems like such a normal guy at points that gets deeper into this plot. There's one scene with Powell and Arona that ties in all the craziness that's gone down, all the secrets he's holding, the different people he's playing, and the way it ties this secrecy in to make for such tense scenes is exhilarating. There's not really any action in this movie, but the complexity of the story and characters, and how all these plots come together, is a really unique idea. This movie is on Netflix. It's one of Powell's best performances. I highly recommend it. The third Glen Powell movie I'm going to talk about here is Twisters. This came out summer of 2024, around the same time as Hitman. This was him in a summer blockbuster kind of role, and this movie has so much of that energy. I've never seen the original Twister. I wanted to the first time I saw this movie, and I never ended up doing it. And now rewatching this movie a few days ago, I feel like I want to check out that first one again, because Twisters is a really fun time at the movies. Having still not seen the original film, I was curious to see how these storm-chasing stories and sequences would be, how exciting it was, and the storm-chasing sequences are really exciting here. You kind of get different types of these sequences throughout. Sometimes characters are trying to capture this data on the storm and getting into position to place these instruments. Sometimes they get caught up in them, they underestimate their power, and it becomes this dash to escape. And sometimes it's civilians in these small Oklahoma towns that get hit by the devastation and destruction of these storms. No matter what it is, the sequences are brought to life so well. There's the intensity of the destruction and the images of these big trucks driving through all this rain and these scary looking skies with debris flying all around. It shows the choreography well of what the characters are trying to do in each scene, why they choose one direction over the other, and what obstacles they're trying to avoid. It helps to have this solid writing and other plot elements in the chaotic scenes to have more to get invested in. It makes it feel even more difficult to survive. You also get instruments on the trucks like these drills that go into the ground, what they're doing with these trailers and devices in there, and the plot adds the science element to show the goals of the characters really well and make you feel the importance of why they're chasing these storms and putting their lives on the line to get this data. Daisy Edgar Jones plays the lead here, Kate, who has this sad backstory that gives her a strong arc in the story. She's working through her trauma and trying to honor some tragedy of the past with doing this mission that could save lives in the future. Jones is great, she has personality, but also brings the seriousness needed at points as this is dealing with these storms that ruin people's lives. She meets Glen Powell's character, Tyler, on the way, who is really fun and has this wild and sarcastic personality that Powell plays so well, but you learn more about him and he becomes really engaging as a character as well as they go through this plot together. Both the characters are fun together and have personality, and they both bring enough seriousness when needed to make the devastation come through. The whole movie balances the tone really well. There are some very cliche elements and some cheesy dialogue, but this is an awesome summer movie that has exciting storm-chasing sequences and two really enjoyable lead characters and performances. If you want a fun movie with that summer movie season energy, give Twisters a watch. I'll be right back on Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale, but first here's some more movie music, starting with Welcome to Jurassic Park by John Williams from the Jurassic Park score. Welcome back to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. Next up today, I have a little movie news I want to talk about. There was a story released by Deadline a few days ago that Bill Hader will make his feature directorial debut with an original horror film titled They Know. The synopsis reads, a divorced dad, played by Hader, who grows suspicious that his ex-wife is secretly dating a mysterious man who is having a strange influence on their children. I was never the biggest fan of Bill Hader as a comedian. I don't find him unfunny. There's some SNL skits I like him in, and I think him and Seth Rogen as the cops is one of the best parts of Superbad. I'm very interested in this project because of the show Barry, mostly. I don't talk about a lot of TV on this show, and I feel like I can use this announcement as an excuse to talk a little about Barry. This is a show that ran for 4 seasons a few years ago, where Bill Hader plays a hitman named Barry, who travels to LA for a job and ends up getting involved in the city's theater art scene. It was co-created by Hader and Alec Berg, and Hader wrote and directed quite a few of the episodes as well as starring in it. and this show is brilliant. It's a very strange concept that when I heard it, I didn't know how good it can be, and it's an incredible balance of drama and comedy that is so funny at times, and also gets extremely dark and terrifying, with extremely rarely, if ever honestly, feeling off-balanced. And with horror in particular, it's obviously not a horror show, but some of how dark it gets and how it makes you feel terrified at points, I could totally see Hader pulling off a really awesome horror movie. I don't know if he's going to go for a mix of horror and comedy for this project, or if he's keeping it a little more straightforward, but even if there's no comedy, I am so convinced of Hader's ability in range as a serious dramatic actor after Barry that I could be so down for either. He does have funny moments in Barry, but the depth of emotions and complexity of his performance in that show is brilliant and something I was not expecting going into it. I've been hoping Hader would get into more directing either on TV or film, and he's taking his talents to the horror genre on the big screen. I'm not the biggest horror fan in the world, but if Bill Hader landed on this idea for what he wanted to direct next, I'm super excited for it. The film begins production in Los Angeles this spring. No real estimated release date is given in the article. I'm really excited for this project, and I strongly recommend you check out Barry on HBO. It is one of my favorite shows. It's only like 32 episodes total. It's a relatively quick show, but it does so much with its different genres and complex characters. It's really funny and really stressful and exciting. Bill Hader's emotional performance is breathtaking. I don't hear this show get talked about as some of the best TV recently, and I think it needs more recognition. So if you want a tremendous lead performance from Hader and want to see some of the direction on the small screen he's already done and how brilliant his filmmaking is, go watch Barry. It's what made me so excited to see this story come out and see that he has some plans in the works for directing. I'll be right back on Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale, but first here's some more movie music, starting with Caravan by John Wasson from the Whiplash soundtrack. Welcome back to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. Closing out the show today, I'm going to give you my 3 throwback recommendations for this week. Every week, I like to take 3 movies I like to recommend and talk about them a little bit here. My first throwback recommendation for this week is 2012's Ted. Directed by Seth MacFarlane, John Bennett, played by Mark Wahlberg, a man whose childhood wish of bringing his teddy bear to life came true, now must decide between keeping the relationship with the bear or his girlfriend Lori, played by Mila Kunis. I love Seth MacFarlane's comedy. I'm a big fan of Family Guy, and love watching even just clips from that show. It's so funny, and he brings his style of humor to Ted. It's very over the top and inappropriate, and has some dark humor, and there's some bits in this movie that are so funny. The concept of this talking teddy bear coming to life, and Wahlberg and him becoming buddies and making all these crazy jokes, and getting into these wild situations together is so much fun. I think Wahlberg is really funny here, and he plays so well off Ted. Seth MacFarlane is playing very close to the Peter Griffin voice here, but it's really funny, and his line delivery of these jokes, the sarcasm, and sometimes bluntness he brings. I love the dynamic between the two leads and the jokes between them, but you can also tell they really care about each other, and the movie can get sweet with their friendship and how it develops. The sweeter moments work well with the nasty humor and don't undercut each other. The actual story with Mila Kunis' character and how the relationships develop adds some more human elements that give the movie a surprising emotional core that has some nice moments. The main draw is definitely the humor and the dynamic with the two leads, but having that little depth was nice to have as well. I love the backstory of Ted and everything there. The whole world building and history of Ted and how he becomes this past celebrity is really fun. And the movie doesn't care much about logic. It's able to get away with a lot of these crazy moments and not caring too much about making sense. It's like Family Guy. It's a cartoon world where you accept everything and go with it, but it still has the human elements. If you're a fan of Family Guy and Seth MacFarlane's humor, you gotta watch Ted. I also enjoy Ted 2 just about as much as this one, honestly. I know some people don't like it, but I enjoy it a lot. And the Ted show on Peacock is great as well, maybe even better than the movies. Season 2 of that actually starts soon. If you like Seth MacFarlane, I recommend the entire Ted universe. My second throwback recommendation for this week is 2013's 42. Directed by Brian Helgeland, in 1947, Jackie Robinson, played by Chadwick Boseman, becomes the first black man to play in Major League Baseball, facing unabashed racism from the public, the press, and other players. This is a great true story of a hugely important man in the history of the country and baseball. You're taken back to the 40s as the country is segregated, including professional baseball, and the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers, Branch Rickey, played by Harrison Ford here, brings in an African-American ball player to play for his team, and that brings in Jackie Robinson to break the color barrier. This movie focuses so much on his experience going through the reactions of people who did not want him there, who are threatening him and giving him all this abuse. He's there to play baseball just like everyone else, but he has this burden of taking this abuse that he's willing to do because of his importance of being the man to break the barrier, what impact that could have on other black ball players. It's such a heartbreaking but inspiring story. Chadwick Boseman is tremendous here. He shows the frustration and anger of Jackie having to go through this, but also his kindness, his sense of humor. His relationship with his wife is really sweet here. He's a kind and brave man that steps into this spotlight and is able to change baseball and make an impact against segregation. This movie is full of inspiring moments and lines. Just some of the images that are so powerful when they come up. You see the impact he makes on people and how he's able to be a symbol of bravery and even change minds. It's incredibly shown here. This movie doesn't focus so much on the actual games. The historical story is obviously most important here, but the sequences you do get here are some of my favorite baseball sequences in film. I love the whole production design of this movie with the old cars and wardrobe in 1940s look, the old school uniforms and stadiums, and the athleticism and speed of Jackie makes for some really cool baseball moments that get you excited. This movie is great as a historical drama and biography of Jackie Robinson. It's inspiring, it's sweet and funny at times, and it has exciting sports moments. It's one of my favorite baseball movies. My third throwback recommendation for this week is 2013's The Way, Way Back. Directed by Nat Faxon and Jim Rash, shy 14-year-old Duncan, played by Liam James, goes on summer vacation with his mother, her overbearing boyfriend, and her boyfriend's daughter. Having a rough time fitting in, Duncan finds an unexpected friend in Owen, manager of the Water Whiz Water Park, played by Sam Rockwell. I love a good coming-of-age movie, and this one I don't hear talked about too much, but it's really good. You have this character of Duncan, who is very shy, that is in a tough family situation, that feels lost on this family vacation, that meets Sam Rockwell's character and forms this friendship. It's such a sweet story of finding this community in an unlikely place. Liam James is really good here. You see his shyness and how he doesn't have a lot of confidence. He gets to this vacation and looks understandably annoyed and bored. And then Sam Rockwell comes along, who is so enjoyable here. We talked about him last week with Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. This guy brings so much fun and energy to his roles. I love him here as this very fast-talking and high-personality guy that will bust people's chops and make jokes, but also is kind and a source of support when he needs to be. The story of this friendship and where things go at this water park is so wholesome and enjoyable. This movie has some super joyful scenes as well as some really dramatic stuff about this kid's home life that gets pretty heavy. Steve Carell is a great performance here as well. He's so unlikable, it's hard to imagine for Steve Carell, but his character can be so cruel and nasty here. I didn't know he could pull off playing this nasty of a character, but he did, and that character's role in the story adds a lot to building this drama. This is one of those coming-of-age movies that comes to a tremendously satisfying end, that does amazing stuff with the character relationships and drama, and it's another excellent Sam Rockwell performance if you wanted to see more from him after Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die last week. So this week, if you want a hilarious Seth MacFarlane comedy with a bit of heart, watch Ted. If you want a powerful historical and sports drama, watch 42. And if you want a fun and emotional coming-of-age story, watch The Way, Way Back. I'll be right back to close out the show, but first here's some more movie music, starting with Pee-wee and Jackie by Mark Isham from the 42 score. That's going to be it for me this week on Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. I'll be back next week with a review of Scream 7 and some more movie talk. You can listen to past episodes of the show on YouTube, and be sure to follow my Instagram for updates and more content. Both of those are Not Quite My Tempo with Chris. New episodes will be up on YouTube after they air on WFNP Rosendale, so this episode will be up very shortly, and I will be back next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Have a good week.